Welcome to episode 14 of the Deep in the Plus Saga. Here's where we go deep into the Disney Plus catalog and take an in-depth look at some of the movies and TV shows that you haven't gotten around to yet, and we break it down to see if it's worth your time. This week, in honor of May the 4th and Revenge of the 5th, it's Phineas and Ferb, Star Wars. Our friends Phineas and Ferb are living happily on Tatooine, just one moisture farm over from Luke Skywalker. They love simply hanging out and creating new adventures under the twin suns. However, they find themselves thrust into a global rebellion when the plans for blowing up the Death Star accidentally fall into their hands. So let's join the boys and their sister Candace, Perry, Dr. D, and the rest of the gang as they do Star Wars. And may the Force be with you, because we're going deep in the plus. Hey guys, welcome back to The Deep. We have a very special Star Wars episode for you, and with me is Ben from Park Center. How's it going, Ben?
Hey everyone, it's going pretty good. How about you?
Good. So we talked about this a little bit, and when you said you were going to be on the show, we said, could we line up something with Star Wars? Now, obviously, Star Wars, the canon movies, are not really deep into this catalog, but we did reach into the Disney Plus catalog and agree on something that was Star Wars, but wasn't maybe all that common, and it's Phineas and Ferb Star Wars.
That was such a good deep cut to find.
Yeah, I know, right? That's very exciting. So at least we get to talk Star Wars, even if it's not Star Wars. So the first thing about this is, this thing ran in July of 2014. It ran as part of season 4, two-part episode. And it was just all about Star Wars, which was really cool. And they didn't frame it within the TV show at all. They just made it about Star Wars. It is a parody of Star Wars. And so, are you a Star Wars fan?
So I definitely like Star Wars. I have seen all of the 3 trilogies of movies at this point. And like I enjoy it a lot. I've been to Batuu a couple times. I've done the lightsaber building experience. I enjoy the Star Wars stuff. I wouldn't say I'm a super fan. I still haven't watched a lot of the TV shows. I haven't gone to like any of the celebrations or anything like that. But I like it, and honestly, I liked this. It kind of caught me off guard that I ended up liking this. I was half expecting it to be just this kind of cringy, not quite working mashing of two things together. But honestly, because they didn't try and force this into the plot of like Phineas and Ferb on summer vacation, they just like took the characters and put them somewhere else. It made a lot more sense and it worked a lot better.
Did you mean to say they didn't force this in? Was that a Star Wars pun? Did you mean to? Because you love some puns, I know.
I do.
What is interesting to me is that they set this up as a episode 4A, so it's kind of like Lion King 1.5, and they give some, like, it's a story that takes place alongside of episode 4, A New Hope, which is kind of cool. So you see Luke and Leia and Han and Chewie, but they're not really part of it. It's, a lot of these parodies, and my favorite parody is the Family Guy parody, Blue Harvest. So that one to me is like, that's an epic parody of Star Wars. That one, they put each of the characters in as one of the main characters. This one, all the main characters were still themselves, and then the Phineas and Ferb crew were themselves, but in the Star Wars universe. And it was really neat to me how Candace, who loves to bust her brothers, was a stormtrooper. And, Phineas and Ferb have kind of a Luke/Obi-Wan role that they fill.
Honestly, I think that was one of the cooler characters in there. Isabella as Han, the Han Solo export, was just, that was so well done. And that's so cool to see that character being all snippy.
So let me ask you this then. So Star Wars, you've like classified how much of a fan you are. Were you a fan of Phineas and Ferb?
Yes.
Like a big fan? Like you watched all the episodes?
I believe I've seen every episode at least once at this point. I didn't necessarily like watch them through front to back. I came in kind of in the middle of the series. Honestly, I discovered it in Disney World. We were in the hotel room, and it was my parents, my younger sister by about 11 years, and myself. And she was watching this show, and my dad's like, "You gotta watch this show," and I'm like, This is on Disney Channel. This is a kid's show. Why are you so excited? All right, fine, I'll watch this. And I watched one episode and I'm like, oh my gosh, how why is this a kids show? This is so good.
Well, and you bring up a good point though, and something that I was thinking of when I was watching this is that there is adult humor in Phineas and Ferb. There is some subtle adult humor. As a matter of fact, in this episode, when they have the Death Star administrative building, and they have all the stormtroopers like playing office roles, and they come around the corner and they think they're going to capture the rebels, but really it's a guy looking at his computer, and there's some kind of a swimwear thing on the screen, and he says, "I promise, I swear, this is for work." I mean, that's something that like I expect like little kids to look up at their parents and go, "What does he mean it's for work? What is he talking about?" And so, I mean, there is some definite adult humor in this one.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Like what caught me off guard, like it's not directly at adults, but there's one scene again with Isabella, where you're first meeting this character. And like we just got done making the Han shot first jokes and everything like that. Isabella's sitting at the table. There's somebody off singing in the corner about how great Han Solo is, and Isabella can't stand that. So just points her gun off screen, fires a shot. You hear a deafened scream, and then just the scene continues.
Yeah,
and I'm just like, oh my gosh, did we just kill somebody?
Right. Well,
and then we pan back like after a minute of tension of like, did you just kill somebody in the show? And no, we just shot their instrument.
Yeah.
But there's definitely this moment where all the adults are like, oh my gosh, this got dark.
So think about this though. So you know Star Wars and you know Phineas and Ferb. Can you say that if you weren't a fan of one or both of these genres, would you enjoy this Star Wars episode? Because it is very Phineas and Ferb, and it is very Star Wars. There is some like line for line dialogue quotes from Star Wars in it. It's a compressed version of Star Wars, obviously, because not only are they trying to put in everything from A New Hope, but they're trying to give you a smattering of all the other things in the Star Wars universe, like the Han shot first joke. So if you didn't know Phineas and Ferb, or you didn't know Star Wars, would this still be good?
So I think if you didn't know Star Wars, you would just be very confused. I think that seeing episode 4 in its entirety is a prerequisite for this. This doesn't go into anything past 4 or before 4, so it's just that one. So I do think you need to know that just to understand what's going on, because we're kind of like we're riding parallel to the plot of episode 4. So if you haven't seen that, you're gonna have a really hard time keeping track of where we are. But if you have seen that and you're kind of new to Phineas and Ferb, like I don't think you really need to know anything about these characters to be able to appreciate it. Like you might like it a little bit more if you know that like Doofenshmirtz is an evil genius. So having Darthenshmirtz is really, really funny. But you don't necessarily have to have seen it to be able to appreciate this. And it might be a good gateway for someone who likes Star Wars but hasn't seen Phineas and Ferb to be like, maybe I would like this kind of humor.
Humor, man, all over the place. Like they had to buy socks for Darth Vader, and they go to Tall, Darth, and Handsome to buy socks. I mean, just little things like that are classic for Phineas and Ferb that they put in here. I love at the beginning where they kind of go through the crawl, and it follows the same thing that most Star Wars parodies do. It has some joke crawl at the front that tells you what's happening. But at the very end of it, they say, by the way, this isn't canon, so just relax.
Yes.
So people who are super Star Wars fans that would look at it and go, oh, well, that didn't happen, or this doesn't make sense, or if that happened, how would this be in there? I love that. I love that kind of tongue-in-cheek meta humor about Star Wars, and that happens in there. It's very fun.
Yeah, they say this isn't canon, but at the same time, they provide justifications for so many things that happen in canon that don't seem to make sense at the surface level. Like, oh my gosh, it happened repeatedly throughout the entire special, and I just adored some of these. Like the random laser bolt at C-3PO and R2-D2 as they're getting into the escape pod.
Yep.
That was Candace and the crew off to the side, and they just had a misfire on one of their weapons.
Yes.
And that scared them in there. The power converters. Why do we want to go to Tashi Station to get power converters, and why is that hanging out with your friends later?
Yes.
Well, we explain that, and it's really well done.
And my favorite was when Perry was the one helping R2 out of Luke's house, because like that would have been so weird for R2, because I think there are stairs there for him to just like, I mean, we know now, but we didn't know then that, at one point R2 could fly, but at that point we didn't know that. So the idea that he would have rolled up those stairs was weird. And when they show Perry in the background kind of just pushing him along, I just am thinking, yes, that would be a great reason why this had happened. And there's so many calls to the original movie. The music using the John Williams score in different places is very cool. And then at the same time, they take the Phineas and Ferb bit of making their own parody songs or songs in this. And some of the songs are pretty funny.
I wouldn't say some. I would say one, honestly. Now, I can understand, like, maybe if this is more your style of humor, it's just not mine personally. But I was not a fan of any of the musical numbers, with the exception of Darth and Schmertz's number for his Inator, which, I mean, I always enjoy those from the show as well. Those are like the best parts.
I guess what I liked about the first one that they did was it was almost the Phineas and Ferb theme, but Star Wars style. And they didn't use the same music, and I mean, but that was kind of the purpose of that first song. And because, again, as a Phineas and Ferb fan, it kind of fit from there. Then the whole thing with her singing the whole solo thing, and then the one at the end is super cheesy. The rebel song, but I do love where she looks over at the guy and says, give me that rebel bass, and I'm like, that was just a good line. It's so corny, and at the same time, I'm all on board. They had me. So you weren't a huge fan of the music, though.
Yeah, the opening number, it felt like they were trying to do the Phineas and Ferb theme, but in Star Wars, like you said. But my problem with it is I feel like you could have just used the opening number from Phineas and Ferb, just the title sequence, and just changed what they were doing, because it's mainly a list of like things that they're going to do over summer vacation. Right. You just take that, you leave the tune intact, and you edit it to be a bunch of different things. Like, they made a joke in the episode about giving a bantha a shower, which is one of the giving a monkey a shower is one of the more famous lines from the intro. I want to see just an entire intro of those jokes. Like, let's take things from there and just swap them out one by one.
Well, when Mom goes over that list, and they have those three things in there, I wonder if they were starting to try to do that and write that, and it just wasn't working, and so they still already had this bit in there, and they went ahead and used it in just a like dialogue form. Maybe. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of. But again, I feel like there was a parallel to what they usually do and what that song was, without it being a word for word thing. So I get what you're saying is you would rather it have been sort of like a swap for swap in using their regular one. So speaking of swapping, this bothered me a lot. Mark Hamill is a voice actor.
Yep.
And he could have easily have done Luke. I mean, there was no reason he couldn't have done that. Anthony Daniels has done C-3PO for, I don't know, everything ever. So I like why they couldn't use some of the original actors to do those voices was a little disappointing. And this was after the Star Wars merger had happened. So Disney had already bought Star Wars by this point. And actually, that was one of the first things we were talking about when we were watching it. We're like, was this before or after? So the purchase for Star Wars happened in 2012. This is in 2014. So, their family at this point, they certainly could have come around for those voices, couldn't they?
They really should have. I know that. I remember when this came out, this was one of the first things that Disney did with the Star Wars property, like, at all. So a lot of people saw just the title of this and went, oh, no, this is what Disney's going to do with Star Wars. They're going to cram it into every Disney Channel show. And then, A, this ended up working and people really liked it. And then B, like, they've done so much more with it. They've been respectful to it with some of the later stuff.
Yeah. So here's another thing that I thought was kind of cool is that when they did the Family Guy Star Wars, they did it as a trilogy. They did 3 different episodes about it. This one, it was like they clearly knew they weren't going to do anything past this because they referenced so many things past it. You see Watto show up in this one. Yeah. You see them talking about Jar Jar in this one. They talk about, just I'm trying to think of some of the other stuff that happened. Oh, they talk about the freezing and carbonite, which isn't until Empire. So there are several things that happen in here that make it seem like, hey, you know what? We're just gonna make it about episode 4, but we're gonna let you know some more about this universe and not think that we're gonna go back and do 5 more of these.
Yeah, like it. I could have seen potentially, like, if this took off like gangbusters, that they might have done 2 more, one for 5 and one for 6, because they didn't shut the door on that.
Yeah.
But you're right that they did try and cover everything from across the canon as much as they could. I guess in case they didn't get the chance to come back, which it turns out they didn't. Something I do want to say on the topic of voice actors, though, is something that caught me off guard. In the end credits, I saw a name scroll by I was not expecting. Wayne Brady is in here.
Right? As additional voices. That was weird. Like, not somebody specifically.
But I know he also did a lot of work on Phineas and Ferb for writing some of their songs. Because they write that so often. If you've seen Whose Line Is It Anyway, he did a lot of work on just improving songs to topics. I could easily see if they're trying to churn out like 2-3 songs an episode, easily just being like, hey, Wayne Brady, like, come over and please, like, think of something for this scene. We need something.
Right. So here's another weird voice thing. Carl wasn't in this episode. You had Major Monogram played a role in this, and Perry played a part in this, but you didn't have Carl in this one, which I thought was interesting. I looked up Carl. Carl is his character is called Carl, even though they usually just refer to him as Carl. It's Carl with a C and Carl with a K. So it's Carl. But one of the things that also I found interesting about that was it's voiced by a voice actor named Tyler Mann. And on the network, we have our own Tyler Mann, which was funny to me too. I saw it in Wikipedia, and then I was like, did Tyler somehow hack Wikipedia and put his name in there? And then I start looking, and I see that this Tyler Mann voice actor who played that. And then on top of that, I'm from Raleigh, North Carolina, so is he. It was very interesting. Ooh. But it was weird not having Carl in there, especially when he's been such a big part of other things like the Phineas and Ferb Perry's World Showcase Adventure that they had at Epcot. He was like, it was basically him throughout the whole thing. I mean, he's kind of your host through it, even though Major Monogram is there, and you've got Dr. Doofenshmirtz and the whole bit. So, I mean, it's interesting to me that he was not in this.
Yeah. The counter to that, though, is where would you put him? Because I can't think offhand of a great spot to kind of slot him in. We did a good job of mapping out where all the characters could go, and I can't think of another like good guy character that we could map him into.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, he could have been an announcer across the Death Star. He could have been, he could have been the bartender in the cantina, or like a bar back or something like that. You're right. I mean, there wasn't like a major role for him, but at the same time, we weren't really filling roles because this was a lot of these characters were running side by side with the regular cast. So. So, I mean, I don't know where he could have been, but it was interesting to me that he seemed to be the only character who wasn't.
So everybody knows about blue milk. You can get it in Galaxy's Edge, all that stuff. They have blue ice cream here. Why don't we have blue ice cream? That would be so good. Like, that's such a great idea, and we don't.
Well, I mean, the blue milk is frozen, so maybe that's why. But I guess you have that in Harry Potter. You have butterbeer and butterbeer ice cream. There isn't really a reason why you couldn't. I don't know. We need to call somebody. Maybe they've been working on it while we've been in quarantine.
Oh, here another example of the subtle adult humor is when Phineas and Ferb are at their house talking with their parents and stuff like that. They leave scene, and then Dad just kind of comments to Mom slyly, "Wait till they discover there's no girls on this planet." Like, as far as I can recall, there is not an obvious humanoid female in the entirety of Episode 4 on Tatooine.
So here's another thing that I thought was funny, is that there are probably a ton of little Easter egg things that I missed in watching this for our show today. But there could have been some other things that were on there, but this one popped out at me, which was that they referred to Candace's her number as TK 90210.
Yep.
I love little stuff like that. And that's, I think, why I love Phineas and Ferb so much, is it has all of these little subtle things, and you kind of find new things every time you watch an episode, and it's just fun. And then some of the music, and to your point, maybe this wasn't the best music of Phineas and Ferb, but some of the music in the series itself is stuff that sticks with you and was really well done, especially for, again, a 30-minute format TV show on Disney Channel.
All right, two last ones I want to touch on before I call it quits here, because if y'all haven't seen it, you probably should just go check it out at this point. Little bit of spoilers for this one. Sith Ferb talks so much.
That's a good point.
Oh my gosh! One of the core things about Ferb is that he says one line an episode, two tops, and then that happens, and he's just constantly talking, and just like, oh my gosh, what have you done to him?
Well, I mean, it's when he becomes a Sith, right? So you've got the excuse of you've changed him, and to your point, I'm trying to think of like any times he really talked leading up into there, which was maybe once.
Yeah, it's usually like just a very like quippy, smart line in scene, and then that's the end of it.
Yeah.
And then I loved this moment where Candace, Buford, and Baljeet are kind of like questioning like the whole motives of the Empire and everything like that, because it just, the entire time I'm sitting there and I'm like, this is the are we the baddies joke from that Mitchell and Webb look. If you haven't seen that bit, go search "Are We the Baddies," and it's just like they're standing around. And it's like, are we really the good guys? It was really cool to see this all happening well before any of the Finn from the new trilogy happened, where we've got that stormtrooper kind of questioning what's right and what's wrong and maybe changing sides. So it's really cool to see that, like, gosh, what is that, 5 years before?
Yeah, so easily. Yeah, and like, you know, the part where they're like, well, we did blow up a planet. Maybe
that's not nothing.
Maybe we aren't the best guys in the world. Yeah,
I love how they delivered that, though, because it's just Doof sitting there at his computer. It's like, oh, I've got this timeshare, and it's so great. Look at this. The value's been going up. I'm so glad I invested in this. But background explosion. It's like, what happened? It's going down. It's zero? What happened? Oh, cutscene.
Did you kind of see that coming, though? Because the planet is so obviously in the background, though. It's one of those things where you're like, oh, it's going to happen. But yeah, it was genius. My timeshare is doing really well.
Did not lower the quality of the joke when it landed. It was great.
Yep. There was something weird about the way Chewbacca was drawn in general. Like,
it was a little weird, wasn't it?
Yeah, like Han, Leia, and Luke look like almost like the either like the Galactic Heroes action figures or the Disney Infinity figures.
Yeah.
And so they look kind of spot on, and maybe it's just harder to draw Chewie, but he just looked weird.
Yeah, I don't know how you draw him better in that style is the real problem, because like Phineas and Ferb has a really distinct style to it, so you have to adapt everything to that world, or else it would look out of place.
True.
So I feel like you're stuck either having it not look good in this style, or look at being an entirely different style and looking very wonky from that.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so with all that said, Ben, would you recommend this show?
I would highly recommend this if you're a fan of Star Wars and Phineas and Ferb. If you haven't seen Star Wars, go see it first and then watch this if you know you like Phineas and Ferb's style of humor. If you know you don't bother. This isn't going to change your mind on the topic. But if you haven't seen Phineas and Ferb, or if you have and you know you like it, this is great. Go see it.
Yeah, I agree. So, I mean, we kind of talked about this at the top of the show that, you know, you really do have to have a little bit of background to be able to watch this. But I think that's true of most parodies of source material, is watch the source material first and then watch the parody. I've heard people who watch Spaceballs before they ever watch Star Wars, and I'm just like, what? Why would you do that? And, you know, maybe it's because it was more entertaining as a kid or something. I don't know. And it is really weird to say if you haven't seen Star Wars, because I feel like you should have seen Star Wars by now. There are some people that I know that haven't, but I feel like everybody should. And so as far as this goes, I mean, I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I love to absorb anything that is Star Wars. I love all the in-jokes within this that are Star Wars. And so to me, as a Star Wars fan, I think it's a must watch. And then as just like a casual fan, I think that especially, with the resurgence of Star Wars and how long it's been since Phineas and Ferb's been out, if you haven't seen this in a while, you should go back and watch it again because it does hold up. It is pretty good. Also, with regards to just overall, if you hadn't seen Phineas and Ferb and you haven't seen Star Wars, there's nothing wrong with this, and it does tell an interesting story. I just think you miss a lot if you don't see them, but yeah. I would highly recommend it. And if you feel differently, let us know. Tell us in the comments below, or hit us up at Deep in the Plus on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. And Ben, thanks so much for watching this with me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was great to watch.
All right, Ben, so you know how this works. You have a chance to go through Disney Plus and find something you want to recommend. So what is your pick of the week?
My pick of the week is going to be Piper, the Pixar short from a little ways back about a little white bird trying to just get some food from the ocean. It is one of the most just nice, adorable little like Pixar shorts that I've seen. And it's always just, whenever I run into it, it's just really this cute, calm, cheers me up kind of feel to it. And I really like stuff like that, especially in a small package like this, where it's just like something you can like watch and have it just kind of be an instant like mood lifter. So that would be what I would recommend this week.
Because we were doing Phineas and Ferb, and because in my family we love some Phineas and Ferb, we actually recently rewatched the Phineas and Ferb movie. So it's Phineas and Ferb, the movie, Across the Second Dimension. And if you haven't seen this one, it is, again, I feel like kind of like we talked about Star Wars, you sort of probably should be a Phineas and Ferb fan, but because this one wasn't part of the regular seasons, you could have missed this one. It wasn't baked in like the Star Wars one was. So in this one, Phineas and Ferb go to another dimension where Dr. Doofenshmirtz has actually had success and has taken over the tri-state area. And so now they have to find a way back, and it's interesting to see how in this other world, like Phineas and Ferb are a little bit more meek, and Candace is really more of the adventurer. And it's just it's a really neat thing, and it's a really cool addition to Phineas and Ferb. One of the things that happens in this one is that they find out that Perry is a secret agent, which they had never known before. And what I find interesting about this built into the Star Wars episode is they refer to that in the Star Wars episode when they meet Perry. They're like, oh, this is our platypus, and we found out that he was a secret agent. And so they've actually kind of are doing a callback to that. In the movie itself, there is a different resolution, so it wouldn't necessarily have made sense. But I'll let you watch that for yourself if you get a chance to see it. It's only an hour and 18 minutes. For a movie, that's a really quick watch. And again, I think if you are at all a Phineas and Ferb fan, you'll enjoy it. And Disney Plus is going to have a new Phineas and Ferb movie coming out called Candace Against the Universe, and that's supposed to come out in 2020. So watch this one, and it'll get you ready for the new one when it comes out. So that's it for us. Thank you again for sticking with us and watching, and we'll see you real soon. Thanks again, Ben.
Yep, thanks for having me. See you next week, guys.
If you like what you're watching, make sure you like and subscribe. You can also find us on social at Deep in the Plus on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And if you're a Disney Parks fan, don't forget to catch me and Rob on Park Center Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. on WDWNT.com.